Welcome to Vanguard, where humans aren't the underdogs. We're the endgame. Enjoy the journey. Cos Verona stood motionless in the center of Mandor's night market, a statue in the current of chaos. Neon lights buzzed and flickered above him, painting his hooded cloak in ever-shifting hues of purple and gold. The air reeked of fried kelp ozone from hover carts and the thick, oily scent of too many bodies packed into too small a space. Still, Kai didn't move. Not a breath, not a twitch. Meditation demanded stillness, and he had practiced this ritual in far worse places than a crowded marketplace on the fifth planet of the Aurelian system. A three-horned Zorgan merchant slammed into him, spilling a crate of bioluminescent fruit that rolled across the cobbled street like glowing eggs. "Watch it, off-worlder," the Zorgan snarled, cranial spikes flaring with aggression. "You deaf stone-faced." Kai didn't respond. His breathing remained steady, eyes closed, every part of him focused on the weight of the ancient sword strapped to his back. Its presence pulsed softly against his spine, not in threat, but as a constant reminder of the discipline he carried with him. Discipline forged in blood and solitude. "Want me to shake him up?" a voice asked inside his head, tinged with amusement and impatience. Ragnar the Blade. Just a little vibration. "I'll make his tentacles curl like fried noodles." No, Kai thought back, maintaining perfect stillness. "Control is the point." "Control is boring," Ragnar grumbled. "We've been here for 47 minutes, I counted." A group of shrieking children swarmed around him, one daring to climb halfway up his leg before a frantic parent yanked the child back. Kai remained unmoved, a pillar in the noise storm. Then the chronometer atop the central tower struck the 11th hour. The bells chimed through the market like a thunderclap. "We're done," Kai whispered. The world slammed back into motion. He exhaled as his eyes opened. Sight, scent, and sound hit him all at once. The shouted barters, sizzling food, overlapping languages in every register from growling to melodic. He rolled his shoulders, releasing the tension from muscles locked in a perfect stance. Finally, Ragnar sighed. "Let's eat. You promised blood-sap noodles, remember?" Kai was about to reply when something caught his attention, something silver flashing high above the crowd. Not metal. Hair. Silver hair, flowing like a comet's tail. Then came the crash, someone vaulting over a merchant's stall. A woman, tall and athletic, slid across the vendor's countertop and hit the ground in a combat roll, scattering wares in her wake. She darted between stunned onlookers with the grace of a born warrior, her violet skin glinting in the lights. "Now that's more interesting," Kai murmured, shifting his body slightly to follow the motion. 4 figures followed. Tactical armor, blue hexagon sigils on their chest plates. Cosm Tech. Kai's eyes narrowed beneath the shadow of his hood. "Those are H6 combat suits," Ragnar commented. "Self-healing nanoweave integrated shields. Military grade. Expensive." "She's important," Kai muttered. She moved like someone who had been trained by elite forces, but the men behind her moved with predatory efficiency. They weren't chasing, they were herding. "Trap," Kai whispered. And sure enough, she made the fatal move, cutting down a narrow alley off the main path. Kai didn't hesitate. He moved. Effortlessly, he scaled the side of a nearby building, each foothold calculated, each motion silent. At the top, he perched on the edge like a wraith, eyes locked on the scene below. The woman skidded to a stop. A brick wall blocked her escape. She turned to her, breathing ragged, reaching instinctively for a weapon that wasn't there. From the other end of the alley, the 4 Cosm Tech soldiers entered. One step forward, blade ignited in a hiss of red light. "Elva de Mandor," he barked through a metallic speaker. "You've led us on quite a chase." Did he just say Ragnar's voice clicked in Kai's head? "That's the princess, the crown princess." Kai's jaw tightened. Elva backed against the wall, blood seeping from a tear in her side. Her emerald eyes glared with a mix of fury and pain. "Cosm Tech sends its regards," the soldier sneered. Elva stood tall, defiant. "Cosm Tech will never control Mandor's crystal fields, my sisters." "We'll join you soon enough," the leader cut her off. "Are we doing something or watching the tragedy unfold?" Ragnar asked, impatient. Kai dropped. A whisper of motion, a flicker in the shadows. And then he was standing between the princess and her would-be executioners, one shoulder against the wall, arms crossed. Problems, he asked lazily. The mercenaries jolted at his sudden appearance. One turned his blade toward Kai. "Walk away, stranger," he growled. "This isn't your business." Kai didn't flinch. That's an odd thing to say to someone offering help. Elva's eyes widened. "You'll help me?" "Four of us," another soldier said, laughing. "One of you, and we're in armor." Kai smiled beneath his hood and slowly pulled it back, revealing a face cut from stone. Cold gray eyes, a scar over his left brow. "I'll ask politely," he said. "Leave the lady alone." The four soldiers exchanged glances, then burst into laughter. "I take it that's a no." With a sigh, Kai reached behind him. His hand gripped the hilt of Ragnar. "Now," Ragnar begged. Kai nodded. In one smooth motion, he drew the sword, a blackened relic of a weapon dull and ancient-looking. The soldiers stared in disbelief. "Is he serious?" one snorted. "That thing belongs in a museum." Kai shrugged. "You're not the first to think that." Then without warning, he tossed the blade. It spun through the air, not tumbling like a thrown weapon, but dancing, accelerating, as if driven by will. 4 flashes of light. The blade returned to Kai's hand with a satisfying snap. The soldiers remained standing for a heartbeat. Then their heads slid from their shoulders, hitting the alley floor in eerie unison. Their bodies toppled an instant later. "Not bad," Ragnar muttered, "but give me space next time. I could have painted the walls." Kai sheathed the sword. "You're insane," Elva whispered, staring at him. "You're welcome," Kai said. She pushed off the wall and stood tall, despite her wound. "You saved me." "Why?" Kai paused. Lucky timing and a bit of principle. She studied him with a look that was equal parts calculation and awe. "What's your name?" "Kai." Her eyes sparkled. "Then Kai, would you marry me?" He blinked. "What? If that's the price of your protection, I accept." What?" And with that, Kai's world turned upside down. Kai wasn't sure what disturbed him more, the fact that a royal princess just proposed to him in the middle of an alley filled with decapitated mercenaries, or the unwavering sincerity in her voice when she did. "I was joking," he finally managed. "I wasn't," Elva replied, wincing slightly as she pressed a hand to her bleeding side. "You're the most capable man I've met. Cosm Tech will keep sending assassins until I'm dead, or until someone stands between them and me. You don't even know me." "I know enough." She gestured at the 4 corpses cooling on the pavement. "You did that. You didn't have to. That's enough for me." Before Kai could formulate a reply that didn't involve expletives or running the opposite direction, the sound of shouting echoed from the marketplace. Reinforcements, fast-moving. "We need to move," he said, grabbing her arm gently but firmly. Elva nodded and led him into the labyrinth of Mandor's back alleys. Despite her injury, she moved with practiced ease. Each corner they turned, each hidden doorway, they slipped through spoke of someone who had mapped these paths with both her feet and her life. By the time they reached the outskirts of the palace, the sky had turned deep violet, and the twin moons of Mandor had begun their rise. The structure itself loomed like a crystalline fortress, both beautiful and uninviting. "Once we cross that threshold," Elva said, as they approached the front gate, "everything changes." Kai arched a brow. "Because of the politics." "No," she said. "Because of the law." The palace gates opened before her as she was recognized by the sentries, but the guards' eyes narrowed when they saw Kai. Their energy spears hummed with barely contained aggression. "Who is this?" the lead guard barked. "My escort," Elva replied firmly, "and my intended consort." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. A beat. Then the weapons rose in unison. "He's armed." "Unregistered weapon detected on his back," another guard reported. "Protocol requires immediate confiscation." Kai's gaze didn't flicker. "I wouldn't do that." They moved anyway. 3 seconds later, 6 guards were on the ground, some groaning, some unconscious, one wetting himself in horror as the tip of a blackened blade rested against his throat. "I believe the princess said to stand down," Kai said mildly. Elva, watching from behind, allowed a tiny smirk to tug at the corner of her lips. "Please don't kill them. I still need some of them to open doors." Kai sheathed, Ragnar nodded and stepped aside as the guards scrambled to form a reluctant honor corridor. "This way," Elva said, regaining her composure. "We have much to discuss." Inside the palace, everything shifted. Gone were the narrow alleys and dirty stone walls of the city. Here luxury reigned, hovering lights, liquid crystal floors, halls lined with artifacts from 100 conquered worlds. Kai didn't flinch, but Ragnar's voice whispered with a touch of sarcasm in his mind. I see the royal family still spends like galactic credit grows on trees. They reached a high chamber with vaulted ceilings and moonstone windows. Two women awaited them. Sisters Elva greeted, stepping forward. Kai took one look and instantly understood why Mandor's royal bloodline was both revered and feared. The first sister had flame-red hair, cropped short, and wild eyes like molten gold, and a posture that screamed war. She wore a form-fitting combat suit with decorative plating and had a curved energy blade at her hip. Her glare could cut steel. The second was her polar opposite, raven black hair down to her waist, deep purple eyes that sparkled with intelligence and mystery. She wore flowing silks that clung to her in a way that was both regal and dangerously seductive. Her walk was a dance, every motion intentional. Elva the warrior snapped, "Where have you been? The palace has been chaos since you vanished." The other sister tilted her head and gave a knowing smile. "And who's this brooding, muscular delight you've brought with you?" Kai blinked. "This," Elva said calmly, "is my new husband." Silence slammed into the room like a thunderstrike. "You're what?" the redhead shouted. "Oh, how deliciously scandalous," the raven-haired one purred. Elva the warrior hissed, stalking toward Kai like a predator. "You married a stranger, a human, without consultation, without ceremony." "He saved my life," Elva replied evenly, briefly, summarizing the assassination attempt in the market. The black-haired sister approached with a curious look. "My sister always had excellent taste," she whispered, eyes flicking over Kai like a scanner. "But I must say I'm a bit disappointed." "Disappointed?" Kai asked cautiously. She leaned closer, that she didn't share. "Share," he repeated, heart already dropping. Elva rubbed her temples. "I was getting to that part." "To what part?" Kai asked, voice edged with dread. The redhead crossed her arms. "About the law." "What law?" The raven-haired one smiled like a cat that had found its favorite mouse. "The law of royal unity. If one royal sister marries, the consort must marry all eligible sisters." Kai froze. "All of you?" he asked, slow and flat. "All of us," the raven confirmed. "It's designed to prevent political manipulation by outsiders favoring one heir." "I didn't sign up for a harem," Kai blurted. "Then you didn't sign up at all," the redhead snapped. "Because if you reject one of us, the entire marriage becomes null. The law is absolute." Kai turned to Elva, whose expression was somewhere between apologetic and amused. "You left out a pretty important detail." "I didn't exactly have time for a briefing during a rooftop chase," she defended. Ragnar, ever the opportunist, cackled in his mind. 3 warrior queens. This is the best day of our life." "This is insane," Kai muttered. "You expect me to marry 3 strangers? Do you expect us to trust our fate to a man unwilling to follow our customs?" The redhead challenged. "We don't expect love," the black-haired one said softly. "We expect loyalty, protection, and perhaps in time something more." The conversation might have continued had the lights not suddenly flickered red. An alarm blared through the palace, and a computerized voice announced, "Security breach in Sector 7, 12, and 18. Unknown hostiles, multiple contacts." The redhead drew her blade. "Cosm Tech, they're attacking again." Elva grabbed Kai's arm. "We'll finish this discussion later. Right now, we need you." Kai's hand reached back and wrapped around Ragnar. "You with us?" Elva asked. Kai didn't hesitate. "I haven't agreed to marry anyone," he said, drawing the ancient blade in one smooth motion. "But I suppose I can't let them kill you before we finish negotiating." Ragnar pulsed in his hand, humming with joy. "Let's dance," the sword whispered. And just like that, the war for Mandor resumed with Kai standing at its very heart. Smoke choked the lower tunnels of Destus 9, a mining colony carved into the belly of a dying asteroid. When the central lift collapsed during a tremor, no one came for the orphans stuck below. No alarms, no rescue team, just silence, dust, and the ever-thickening scent of death. Kai had been 10 years old when the rock slide happened. He remembered the red emergency lights flickering on his helmet, barely cutting through the darkness. His oxygen was running low, and his tiny frame was the only reason he'd survived the initial collapse. He crawled through debris, fingers bleeding lungs, burning, dragging himself deeper into the ancient mine in search of air or escape. Instead, he found a chamber that shouldn't have existed. It was perfectly hexagonal, the walls constructed from a black metal that devoured light. It was smooth, too smooth, as though it had been forged by forces no longer found in the galaxy. At the center stood a pedestal. Upon it rested a sword, long, battered, blackened with age. Even then, something about it called to him. He approached with trembling hands, heart pounding, not with fear but recognition. He didn't know how, but something in his bones told him this was meant for him. The moment his fingers brushed the hilt, a voice bloomed in his mind. Finally, it said, deep, warm, smug, someone interesting. Kai jerked back. The voice didn't vanish. Don't be alarmed, little one. I've been waiting a very long time. The others weren't worthy. You might be. Who are you? Kai whispered aloud, though no one was there. I am Ragnar, forged in the heart of a dying star, once wielded by kings now forgotten beneath the dust of your kind. I am a weapon, but not just a weapon. And you, child, you have potential. Kai stared at the blade. He was small, starving, broken. What kind of potential could a cursed sword possibly see in a half-dead orphan? You can die here, the voice said gentler now, or you can take me, and together we might escape. Desperation beat out fear. He reached again this time, wrapping both hands around the hilt. It fit. Despite the size, despite the age, it felt like it had always belonged there. Good, Ragnar purred. Now strike! The voice showed him an image, the weak point in the far wall. The spot that might collapse the rock just enough to let air in. Kai swung. The blade moved like it weighed nothing. Stone sheared away like paper. Light poured in, oxygen followed. He stumbled out of the hidden chamber and into the path of a search party. Days later, half-starved eyes haunted, clutching the ancient sword like it was life itself. From that day, he and Ragnar were inseparable. But it wasn't a fairy tale. It was hell. The sword trained him mercilessly. Body, mind, soul. Each day was pain, each night worse. He grew stronger faster, but at a cost. There was no rest, no safety, only the whisper of Ragnar in his thoughts. Again, your stance is wrong. You're timing off by 0.2 seconds. Fix it. At 16, Kai collapsed on a mountainside in the wastes of Saitos II. Muscles torn, knuckles cracked, vision swimming with exhaustion. I can't, he gasped. It's too much. Your body says no. Your mind believes it. But I know better. I'm not some ancient warrior. I'm just a kid. You're what I make you. And so he rose. Again and again and again. On Horvik Prime, when 6 assassins mistook him for another target, Ragnar whispered calmly through the chaos, guiding every dodge, every counter, every strike. When the dust settled, 6 bodies bled in the alleyway. That night, Ragnar said only, without me, you'd be dead. Kai had nodded. Without me, you'd still be buried. The years turned them into something terrifying. Mercenaries told stories. Whispers of the Shadow Blade, of a human who moved like a ghost wielding a sword that hummed with a will of its own. But there was more than just violence. There were the nightmares. Flashes of a forgotten time, Ragnar's memories bleeding into his dreams. Of galaxies burned in ancient wars. Of wielders turned to tyrants. Of Ragnar sealed away to prevent another extinction. Kai tried to ignore them, focused instead on staying alive. On drifting from job to job, never staying too long, never forming ties. Until Elva. Until that alley. Now in the depths of Mandor's palace, with the walls still echoing from the battle they just fought, Kai stood silent while the sisters tended their wounds. TAA leaned against a column, blood on her cheek. Rima knelt beside a wounded guard, mentally assessing damage with a glance. Elva paced near the central chamber doors, pistol in hand, scanning for threats. Kai's grip tightened on Ragnar's hilt. The blade pulsed gently. You still thinking about running? Ragnar asked in his mind. Kai didn't respond. Because we both know what's happening. You've seen her face before. That stopped him cold. The memory surged forward unbidden. Terrace 4, refugee sector. Bombs had reduced the hangar to rubble. 8-year-old Kai sat beneath a broken beam, lips cracked from dehydration, stomach gnawing itself. He remembered the procession, a column of armored vehicles, guards in silver. He remembered darting forward, stealing a piece of fruit from an unattended tray. He hadn't made it far. A soldier caught him, threw him to the ground, raised a rifle. Then a voice had cut through the chaos. Stop. A girl with violet skin and silver hair had stood between them. Are we so poor, she'd asked, that we can't spare a piece of fruit for a starving child? She'd handed him not just the fruit, but a package of bread and dried meat. Smiled at him like he mattered. I'm Elva, she'd said. He'd never forgotten. Back in the present, he found her standing beside him again, watching, eyes bright, perceptive. You remember, don't you? She said. Kai nodded slowly. Terrace 4. Her lips parted in soft surprise. That was you? The boy you saved, he said. You fed me when no one else would. I never knew what happened to you, she whispered. I survived. Barely. Then I found Ragnar. Ragnar, ever the narcissist, cut in. Finally some credit. Do tell her how I saved you from being worm food. Kay ignored him. The doors to the chamber creaked open. TAA and Rima entered, regathered and ready. Elva addressed them with quiet resolve. We're not safe here anymore. They'll try again. And next time, Rima added, they might send something worse than foot soldiers. Kai looked at the three of them. 3 sisters. 3 lives intertwined with his now, whether he liked it or not. All staring at him, trusting him. How the hell did I end up here, he muttered aloud. You followed your sword, Ragnar replied. And maybe, Elva said softly, you followed your heart. Kai winced. That was corny. Shut up, she shot back, smiling faintly. But even he couldn't deny the shift. Something had begun here, something that couldn't be undone. Not with a blade, not even with distance. He was no longer just the shadow blade. He was part of something bigger. And deep down in the place he kept buried beneath training scars and trauma, it terrified him. 3 days later, the royal transport cut across the star-laced void like a silver fang. Suspended in the blackness ahead loomed the Concordat station, a colossal tri-sun-balanced fortress where galactic power wore a polished face. Its surface shimmered with force fields and refracted light, 1,000 docking rings in perpetual motion, its structure balanced between gravity wells like a divine equation in motion. Kai stood at the viewport, arms crossed, his reflection flickering in the glass. Behind him, the sisters prepared. Robes, protocol, composure. Remind me why we're going into a den full of corrupt bureaucrats and rival corporations again, he asked aloud. To stop Cosmtech from turning our world into a strip mine, Elva replied from behind a curtain, adjusting the clasps on her ceremonial gown. To prove that Mandor still has sovereign rule, Rima added, brushing dust from the sleeve of her midnight blue dress. Her hair flowed behind her like living silk, and TA said with a sharp smile, to watch you squirm in a suit. Kai glanced down at the formal coat they'd forced on him, black high-collared, trimmed in silver to match Elva's gown. I feel like a decorative weapon, he muttered. That's because you are, Ragnar said cheerfully in his mind. Just try not to kill anyone unless I say please. Kai's eyes flickered back to the station. Last time I was at the Concordat, I got thrown out for punching the Proxim ambassador. Elva told us, Rima said dryly. You shattered 4 of his facial lenses. He insulted my boots, Kai defended. TAA laughed. Well, your reputation precedes you. That's half the battle. The ship docked with a hiss of pressure release. A squad of Concordat officials waited on the other side of the airlock, tall, clean, and utterly unreadable in their white uniforms. Their leader stepped forward, bowed, and said, The High Council awaits. Please follow me. They walked through gleaming corridors, past opulent displays of interstellar unity. Holographic banners cycled between languages and alliances. Every step they took was watched by security drones, ambassadors, and politicians behind mirrored glass. Kai's eyes never stopped moving. Ragnar hummed in his mind, 17 weapons hidden in this corridor. 12 armed personnel disguised as aides. I'd say you've got 23 ways to die before breakfast. I counted 25, Kai replied mentally. Show off. The Grand Council chamber was a cavernous space shaped like a spiral amphitheater, with 27 tiered seats rising above a circular platform at its center. Observers crowded the balconies above beings of every species broadcasting judging scheming. The Mandor delegation was announced. A hush fell. Kai stepped onto the platform with the sisters instantly feeling the weight of thousands of eyes. For the first time in years, he wasn't just a weapon. He was a symbol, a pawn, or a king. Directly opposite them, seated in a sleek enclave of glass and steel, was Tech's delegation. At their center sat a woman that Kai recognized instantly, Vatralis corporate executor. Augmented spine, chrome-plated eyes, a smile that had never been genuine in its entire existence. The council recognizes the delegation of Mandor boomed the central speaker, a willowy alien whose skin shimmered like starlight. You may begin your defense against Tech's petition for stewardship. Elva stepped forward with poise. For 20 generations, Mandor has stood as a sovereign matriarchy prospering under peaceful guidance. We reject Tech's claim that our world requires intervention. We have proof of their interference, covert destabilization, incited coups, and attempted assassinations. The chamber buzzed. Liss rose with calculated elegance. Charming speech, Your Highness, but the data does not lie. Since your mother's illness, exports have declined by 177%. Internal conflicts have increased. The people of Mandor deserve stability. You mean control, TAA said coldly. The law is clear, Lice replied. Without a male consort, your line is politically invalid. You cannot rule alone. We have a consort, Rima said. She gestured to Kai. Silence fell. The Starlight speaker tilted its head. Kos Veronis, is it true you have entered into a unified marriage contract with all three princesses of Mandor? Kai stepped forward, voice steady. I have. Whispers rippled through the balconies like a wave. Liss narrowed her chrome eyes. You expect the council to believe this is legitimate. A wandering sword for hire suddenly becomes royal husband material. Kai locked eyes with her. I've bled for Mandor, bled for its heirs. I protect them not because of obligation, but because I chose to. You were paid, Liss snapped. Kai raised an eyebrow. Were you? Because this smells like desperation, not diplomacy. The council murmured again louder. You ask us to overturn galactic law. Lice accused based on a bodyguard's word in a rushed ceremony. Perhaps this will convince you, Elva said. She stepped beside Kai and laced her fingers into his. The move was subtle but powerful, symbolic. Rema and TAA flanked them, forming a wall of unity. Three princesses, one man, a declaration without words. Still the speaker frowned. Galactic law requires more than symbolism. You must demonstrate capacity, military, diplomatic, and ethical. You want proof, Kai said, voice low, but cutting. Then investigate the 30 mercenaries I killed 3 days ago while defending these women in their own palace, all with Tech implants in their skulls. A beat. Then, bang. The chamber doors opened. 6 heavily armed soldiers marched in. Uniforms bore the Tech sigil. Liss turned toward them with feigned surprise. What is the meaning of this intrusion? The speaker demanded. Security measure, Liss said. There have been threats. These are simply bodyguards. Kai didn't blink. Those aren't guards. They're a kill team. Ragnar's voice sharpened. They're positioning for crossfire. Now confirmed. Rima's voice entered Kai's mind. I sense hostility, multiple targets. Attack is imminent. Kai's eyes didn't waver. You want demonstration of loyalty, he said. Then I hope you're watching closely. The nearest attacker moved. Ragnar whispered, go. In one motion, Kai reached beneath his formal coat and drew the blackened blade. A ripple of darkness exploded from it as light bent and warped. The soldiers raised their rifles, but they were too late. Ragnar sang through the air, deflecting energy rounds with inhuman precision. Kai moved like liquid death, positioning himself between the sisters and the attackers, body a blur. Screams echoed across the chamber as observers ducked behind barriers. The council guards moved too slow. The first 4 attackers were down before they realized Kai was moving. Then Ragnar struck the floor. A wave of black energy rippled outward, disabling all hostile weapons. The final 2 soldiers dropped, twitching from disrupted neural feedback. Silence fell. Smoke curled. And at the center stood Kai, breathing steady, sword raised. "The royal family of Mandor," he said, "is under my protection." The speaker slowly stood. "So noted, royal consort." Liz said nothing as council security surrounded her. Ragnar's laughter echoed in Kai's mind. That was fun. The council chamber reeked of ionized air and burning circuitry. The scent of singed flesh lingered like a warning. Council guards moved through the debris with urgency, escorting unconscious attackers and scanning for residual explosives. Above the observation balconies were silent, thousands of voices struck dumb by what they just witnessed. Kai stood still at the center of it all, breathing steady, sword lowered, but still humming with residual energy. The central speaker of the council, still somehow composed despite the attempted bloodbath, spoke in a voice that filled the cavernous chamber with authority. "The council recognizes that the Cosm Tech delegation has violated Concordat Protocol, Article 7, no weapons, no violence, no unauthorized militia in this sacred space. Executor Vetralis, you are hereby stripped of diplomatic status, pending tribunal." Liz didn't flinch as 2 guards approached her with restraints. She raised her chin. "You fools think this changes anything." The game was lost the moment he walked in with those women. Kai tilted his head. "You're not wrong, but you still played like an amateur." Her eyes burned with synthetic fury as she was dragged away. Council aides scurried forward, whispering to their representatives, recalibrating alliances in real time. Several planetary blocks that had leaned toward Cosm Tech now leaned very much the other way. Kai turned back toward the platform where Elva, Rema, and TAA stood. All 3 had held their ground during the fight, barely moving, trusting him entirely. Now they stepped forward as one. Elva spoke first. "Let the record show our consort has not only demonstrated loyalty, but the capacity to act under fire with precision, restraint, and overwhelming force." Rema added, "Which by your own laws satisfies the final criteria for royal legitimacy." TA grinned. "Unless you'd prefer, we hold a few more duels here to prove our point." The central speaker took a long, thoughtful pause. "The council agrees. Mandor's sovereign status is hereby reaffirmed. The marriage contract is recognized. The petition by Cosm Tech for planetary stewardship is denied." The chamber didn't erupt in applause. This was politics, not theater, but a definite shift occurred. Eyes that had been skeptical now sparkled with curiosity. Representatives leaned forward. Some smiled. Others took notes. The game had changed. As the council adjourned, a procession of planetary dignitaries began approaching the sisters. Some came bearing formal greetings, others subtle offers of alliance. A few even bowed to Kai, their respect hard-won. But Kai wasn't listening. He was scanning the room. Ragnar's voice was low. "You feel it too?" "Yes," Kai replied silently. "This isn't over." "No, it's only just begun." Hours later, back aboard their royal vessel, the sisters gathered in the central briefing room, while Mandor's pilot plotted a hyperspace exit vector. Rema projected holocharts onto the main table showing recent troop movements, intercepted transmissions, and corporate financial shifts. "Cosm Tech's fall from grace will create a vacuum," she said. "Their assets will be scavenged. Smaller factions will try to take pieces of their empire." Elva nodded. "And someone will come for us again. We've exposed their failure. They'll want revenge, or worse, to erase the embarrassment." Kai leaned against the far wall, arms crossed, Ragnar resting across his back. "What I don't understand," he said slowly, "is why they gambled so hard on this." "They had inside information," Rema replied. "They knew the queen was dying. They knew Mandor lacked a male heir. In their eyes, we were vulnerable." Kai said, "Until now." Ta cracked her knuckles. "So what's our next move, strategist?" "We use the momentum," Elva said. "We solidify the marriage in the eyes of Mandor and the galaxy. We declare full sovereignty, increase border security, and start negotiating trade partnerships from a position of strength. Kai grunted. So I really am a political weapon now. You always were, Ragnar chimed in. You're just getting better wardrobe. Kai gave the sword an audible sigh. The sisters smirked. Later that evening, as the ship slipped into hyperspace, Kai stood alone in the observation deck watching the stars smear into golden lines. Elva joined him. For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of the engines was the only sound between them. You look different, she said finally, when you were fighting. Not like a warrior, like a force of nature. I don't enjoy it, Kai replied. She nodded. But you're good at it. I was made to be. Silence again. Then she turned toward him. Do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you hadn't picked up that sword? Kai didn't hesitate. I'd be dead. And now, he looked at her. Now I'm still trying to figure out if I've actually come back to life or just found a more elaborate battlefield. Her hand reached out, brushing lightly against his. He didn't pull away. I meant what I said, Kai, she whispered. This isn't about politics anymore. Not for me. He stared at her, heart tight in his chest. I don't know how to be what you need. I do, she said. You already are. And for once, Ragnar said nothing. The ship dropped out of hyperspace over Mandor to the site of celebration. Holographic banners filled the skies. The capital city shone like a jeweled crown. Fireworks erupted over the crystalline spires of the palace. Kai followed the sisters onto the landing platform, where the royal guards saluted them with blades raised. Queen Valorous, aged frail and confined to a floating throne, emerged to greet them personally. She smiled weakly at her daughters, then turned to Kai. So she said in a rasping voice, this is the human who cleaved a kill team in half and with a relic blade and married my daughters without courtship. Kai blinked. Yes, ma'am. Her eyes twinkled. Good. Mandor's never been fond of tradition anyway. She raised a hand, trembling but still sovereign, and placed it on Kai's shoulder. Protect them, she said. Rule with them, and gods help you if you break any of their hearts. Yes, your majesty. Then with surprising strength, she leaned in and whispered, and don't think I didn't notice the sword talking to you during the ceremony. I used to carry one like that before I outgrew him. Kai blinked. She smirked, then was wheeled away. Back inside the palace, as the people of Mandor celebrated with revelry in the streets, the sisters led Kai to the central balcony to greet their world. Tei stood at his left, Elva at his right, Rima behind them, hands clasped head high. 3 royal sisters, 1 human warrior, the consort of Mandor. He gazed down at the city, a world he had once passed by in silence, now roaring his name in unity. The air felt electric, final, triumphant. And yet, Ragnar's voice stirred again, not amused, not playful. Something's wrong. Kai tensed. Where? Not here, Ragnar said. Not now. But out there. Something watched us during the vote. Something old. Kai's eyes scanned the stars. He felt it too. Something had shifted. The galaxy had taken notice. And somewhere on a dark moon where no sunlight reached, a figure with Kai's face studied a projected image of the Concordat Council chamber. A face twisted by cybernetic implants, eyes glowing red. So the figure murmured, you survived and found a throne. He touched the side of his face where half his skull was now metal, the place Ragnar had once sliced. I'll come claim it soon. Then he smiled. The return to Mandor was not just triumphant, it was seismic. News of the council attack, Kai's intervention, and the official recognition of the royal marriage spread faster than the royal cruiser could make the jump back to the Aurelian system. By the time the ship entered atmosphere, every crystal spire of the capital city shimmered with projections of Kai's face and the Mandorian crest behind him. The streets overflowed with cheering crowds. Royal guards struggled to contain the throngs gathered around the palace, their voices rising in a single chant, foreign yet clear, shadow consort, shadow consort. Kai watched from the edge of the docking ramp as the roar washed over him. His hands stayed at his sides, relaxed but ready, not out of fear, out of instinct. Even now, in the heart of a planet that had embraced him, he couldn't quite silence the reflex. You look like you're waiting for someone to stab you, Elva said beside him, her voice wry but warm. I'm waiting for the moment the celebration ends, Kai replied. That's when the real attacks begin. Rima smirked from the other side. You sound like Ragnar. I spend too much time with him. Excuse you, Ragnar chimed in. I spend too much time keeping you alive. TAA clapped him on the back, hard enough to stagger him slightly. You'll adjust. You're not a ghost anymore, Kai. You're real now. To all of them. He said nothing, but his jaw tightened. Inside the palace, the trio of princesses entered the grand ballroom alongside their newly official consort, each of them wearing the ceremonial colors of their house. Elva wore royal purple threaded with crystal wire. TAA was clad in crimson battle silk laced with gold. Rima's dress was a constellation of deep blue and stars shimmering as she moved. Kai wore black, accented with silver, the same shade used in Mandor's war banners. Deliberate, powerful. The announcement was made formally before Queen Valorous, before the High Council of Mandor, and before hundreds of guests broadcast to thousands of outlying colonies. A new royal structure was declared. Elva Rima and TAA would rule jointly with Kai, now titled First Consort of Mandor, vested with full powers of defense protection and interstellar representation. The galaxy watched a myth take human shape. And Kai, he stood still beneath a vaulted crystal ceiling, Ragnar strapped to his back, feeling like the axis of a wheel he never meant to turn. The ceremony faded, the crowds departed, the guests retired. But inside Kai's mind, everything still spun. He stood alone now, hours later, on one of the palace's outer balconies. The city glittered below lights reflected in the glassy surface of Mandor's central lake. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt unmoored. Ragnar manifested beside him, a shimmering silhouette of black energy that only Kai could see. He leaned on the railing, casually, his form shaped vaguely humanoid, but flickering around the edges like a ghost caught mid-thought. Well, Ragnar said, you did it. You're a husband, a national symbol, protector of a dynasty, defender of a culture, probably going to be on currency soon. Kai exhaled, and yet I still don't know what the hell I'm doing. Now you know what royalty feels like. Kai let his hands rest on the railing. I wasn't made for this. You weren't made for anything, Ragnar replied. You survived. You adapted. You created meaning by refusing to die. Kai looked at him. You sound almost philosophical. 15 years with a brooding orphan does that to a sword. A quiet set of footsteps interrupted them. Elva appeared now wearing a far simpler gown than earlier. Pale lavender, sleeveless, practical. Her hair was down, her expression unguarded. Ragnar's projection gave Kai a teasing smirk and then vanished into mist. Thought I'd find you here, she said gently. Didn't want to be in the center of the room anymore, Kai admitted. She joined him at the railing. For a while they said nothing. Then softly she asked, do you regret it? Kai turned toward her. What? Agreeing to this, to us, to all of it. He studied her face. Strong, determined, tired in a way only rulers and survivors knew. But beneath the weariness there was hope. Fragile. Fierce. No, he said quietly. I don't regret saving you. I don't regret standing beside you. But I do regret not knowing what comes next. Elva reached for his hand fingers threading through his. You don't have to know, she said. You just have to stay. I've never stayed before. Then maybe it's time to start. A long silence stretched between them. Kai finally said, I don't know how to be this. A consort, a partner, a symbol. I don't even know if I want to be. Elva's hand didn't leave his. You don't have to want it all today, she said. You just have to want me. Her honesty disarmed him more than any sword ever could. He closed his eyes for a moment, remembering years of running, hiding, bleeding, the aching solitude of his soul. Then he opened them and saw her, standing there, waiting, unflinching. So he said, then I do. Rima and TAA found them later. The four stood together on the balcony as fireworks burst above the city. The stars were hidden by smoke and color, but the moment shimmered with its own quiet gravity. So Taye said, leaning on the stone balustrade, does this mean you're finally staying? Kai didn't answer immediately. But when he did, the words came easily. Yes. You sure? Rima asked, her eyes playful but sincere. You do know what staying with us entails. Political assassins, Ancient grudges, palace intrigue, marriage law, nightmares. He looked at each of them. Honestly, it's easier than mining tunnels with Ragnar yelling in my head. We're keeping that line, Elva murmured, smiling. Ragnar's voice echoed softly in his mind. You're not alone anymore. Maybe now we become something more than just survivors. For the first time in 15 years, Kai believed it might be true. But just as peace settled in his chest, a single transmission came in through the palace security channel. High priority, unverified origin, encrypted with an ancient code. Kai moved quickly, accessing the nearest console. When the feed stabilized, he saw a face that should have been impossible. His own, or rather a twisted mirror of it, cybernetic implants webbed across one half eyes glowing red with artificial fury. I see you found your purpose, brother, the voice said. Kai's blood ran cold. Enjoy it, the doppelganger said, grinning, because I'm coming to take it from you. The feed cut. Silence returned. Ragnar's voice was like steel in Kai's mind. The other blade has returned. The inner sanctum of the Mandorian palace was unlike anything Kai had ever seen, not in the ruins of Jorvik Prime, not in the crystalline temples of Caldera 6, and certainly not in the Blackstone chambers where he first met Ragnar. This place felt alive. The walls weren't stone or steel, but luminous crystal. They pulsed with gentle, light, shifting colors in response to the presence of others. The floor beneath his boots shimmered like frozen starlight, cool and smooth, and somehow soft to the step. Everything here felt ancient, reverent. Elva walked ahead of him barefoot now, her ceremonial gown replaced by a simple wrap of fabric woven from silken energy strands. She moved with a quiet grace that was more powerful than any royal command. What is this place? Kai asked, voice instinctively hushed. The heart of Mandor, she replied without turning. Few outsiders have ever seen it, few Mandorians for that matter, and yet I'm here, because you're not just an outsider anymore. At the center of the room stood a shallow pool, but its contents weren't water. The liquid glowed with a shifting radiance, sometimes blue, sometimes silver, sometimes a color Kai couldn't name at all. It moved as if breathing, as if waiting. This is Lumience, Elva said. Our people call it the sighted essence. The first queen discovered it nearly 10,000 years ago. Through it, she claimed to glimpse fragments of time, not memories, not visions, but probabilities. Kai frowned, like prophecy, like possibility, Elva corrected. Each daughter of Mandor has a different reaction to it. TAA channels it into fire. Rima bends it into mental power. But for me, she turned toward him now, her green eyes gleaming. For me, it shows futures. She extended a hand toward him. Kai hesitated. What's wrong? She asked. I've spent my entire life trying to survive the present, he said. I'm not sure I want to know the future. Elva's hand didn't waver. Then don't look for answers. Look for understanding. Reluctantly, he reached out. Their hands touched. Warmth bloomed where their skin met. Together, they stepped forward and placed their joined hands into the surface of the Lumience. And the world changed. The chamber dissolved. In its place, a storm of vision and sound erupted around them. Kai saw Mandor broken, burning, the palace reduced to molten ruin. The spires collapsed. The sky choked in smoke. A line of bodies, Elvarima TAA, strung from scaffolds like grim warnings. Cosm Tech insignia sprayed across the palace gates. Machines harvesting the crystal fields, stripping the planet bare. Then the vision shifted. Mandor flourished. He saw the city grown even taller. Its towers adorned with light and energy, trade flowing in from every system, peace, innovation. Elva TAA and Rima standing atop the central dais, not just ruling but thriving. And beside them, a man. His face was hidden in shadow, but Kai knew it was him. Another vision surged in the twin sons of Mandor, eclipsed by a dark fleet, a second Kai commanding armies that scorched entire systems in his name. A Kai who wore the same sword but whose eyes burned with nothing human. The possibilities spiraled versions of himself, broken, twisted, corrupted, or victorious and beloved. Versions where he was alone, or where he had children, or where he died screaming in a corridor betrayed and forgotten. And then stillness. Back in the chamber. The glow of the lumience dimmed. Kai pulled his hand back, breathing ragged. Elva was already watching him, her expression unreadable. "What did you see?" she asked. Everything, he whispered. Too much. She nodded solemnly. It always is the first time. Kai wiped his hand on his coat instinctively, though it wasn't wet. Is that what's waiting for us? Fire or glory? No, she said. That's what's possible. It's our choices that determine what becomes real. He looked at her, still reeling. And you've seen these visions before. Elva's eyes softened. Yes, I saw you long before you ever returned to my life. Not your face, not your name, but your presence. Standing beside me. Not as a weapon, as a partner. Kai said nothing. He didn't need to. Their silence was louder than words. And then with deliberate care, Elva stepped closer and reached up, cupping his cheek. Her touch was gentle, but it carried weight, like she was grounding him back into the moment. He leaned into it. Their lips met. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't desperate. It was quiet and real and slow, a collision of shared burdens, hopes, and scars. For Kai, it was a kind of awakening, not the kind that comes with battle, but the kind that leaves you breathless in wanting more, because for the first time, something was worth staying for. When they finally parted, Elva rested her forehead against his. Still afraid, she asked. Kai let out a shaky breath, terrified. Good, she whispered. Me too. They stood like that, suspended in silence, until the glow of the lumience slowly dimmed once more. Later, as they left the sanctum and returned to the upper palace, Kai remained quiet. His thoughts were a maze of futures, desires, fears, and inevitabilities. Ragnar stirred in his mind. Well, the sword murmured, that was unexpected. I'm allowed to have a life. I never said you weren't. I'm just surprised she's the one. Kai smirked. You expected someone taller. Someone less royal, Ragnar replied dryly. Politics is messy. So is love. There was a pause. Then quietly, Ragnar said, she reminds me of someone. Kai blinked. You were in love once. Not me. My first wielder. A queen of a world lost to time. She was complicated. Kai glanced over his shoulder. Elva was speaking softly to one of the palace staff, already returning to leadership. She's complicated too. Then maybe it'll work. Kai didn't respond. But deep inside, in a part of him he'd long buried, he allowed the tiniest flicker of belief to take root. He had seen possible futures, but only one truly mattered, the one he chose to fight for. The night on Mandor was quiet, but only on the surface. High above the palace, the sky shimmered with soft auroras from the twin moons, casting long shadows across the city's crystalline towers. Below, the people celebrated in taverns and homes, toasting to freedom's sovereignty and the man who had become their unlikely protector. Kai stood once more on the royal balcony, flanked by three women who no longer felt like strangers. Elva, Ta, Rima. Each so different, each fire in their own right, and all of them his. He hadn't spoken the words aloud, not yet, but the bond had been forged not in ceremony or legality, but in blood, vision, and choice. This wasn't a fairy tale. This was war-born loyalty. Does this mean you're staying? Asked, again leaning her elbows on the marble railing. Kai chuckled softly. You really like asking that. I like being sure. You're not used to people staying. No, Rima answered for her. Most want the power, not the responsibility, or they run the moment the politics get messy. And I'm still here, Kai said. Which begs the question. Rima turned toward him, one elegant eyebrow raised. Why? Kai looked down at the city. Because I've never had a reason to stay before. Never had people I wanted to protect who could protect themselves too. Elva stepped closer, placing her hand on his arm. You still could walk away, even now. I know, he said. That's why I won't. Her smile was small, but it reached her eyes. It always did when she let her guard drop. They stood in silence for a while, three sisters and the man who'd become the fulcrum of their future. And then Kai said, this isn't going to be easy. No, Ta agreed, but it'll be ours. Rima sighed, her tone half exasperated. Stars, you're all getting sentimental. It's nauseating. I saw you cry during the council vote, Ta teased. That was allergies. To politics, to sincerity, Rima deadpanned. They all laughed, even Kai. It felt like a beginning, not a perfect one, but one worth fighting for. And then the quiet was broken by a low chime, an encrypted message delivered directly to Kai's personal channel. He frowned and stepped aside, the others watching him with curiosity as he activated the interface embedded in the stone wall. The hollow display shimmered to life. A face appeared. His face, but twisted, older, hardened, marked with cybernetic implants. A red glow where one eye should be. Scar tissue where half his cheek had been replaced with metal plating. Kai's body went still. "I told you I'd find you the copy," said voice lower laced with venom. "And here you are, surrounded by royalty and pretending to be human." Ragnar stirred inside Kai's mind instantly. Him. "Yes," Kai whispered. "The other one." The hollow continued. "You took what should have been mine. You left me to die in that system while you ran. But I survived, and now I see the throne you've stolen." TAA's jaw clenched. "Who the hell is that?" Raymond narrowed her eyes. "He has Kai's genetics. The bone structure is nearly identical minus the implants." Elva stepped forward. "Is that your brother?" Kai's voice was quiet, cold. "No, he's a clone, a copy. I was part of a project I never asked for. He was one of the failures." The hollow smirked. "I was the improvement. You're a walking grudge." "I'm the blade that was discarded," the clone growled. "But now I've reforged myself, better, faster, angrier." Kai said nothing. The clone leaned in toward the recorder. "You built a life. I'll enjoy burning it down." The message ended. The display flickered out. Ragnar's voice was grim. "He has a version of me, or something like me. I can feel it through the data signature. Twisted, unstable." Kai nodded. "That explains how he's still alive." Rima crossed her arms. "Do we know where he is?" "No," Kai said. "But he'll come. That was a warning shot. He's baiting me." Elva looked up at him, concern flickering across her expression. "What are we going to do?" Kai didn't answer at first. Then slowly he turned to face them all. "We prepare. We rebuild. We train. And when he comes, I won't face him alone." Taya cracked her knuckles. "Damn right you won't. We're a package deal," remember Rima added. Elva stepped forward. "This isn't your past anymore. It's our future. We'll face it together." Kai looked at the three of them, and for the first time the weight didn't feel so crushing. It felt shared. Ragnar murmured, "You finally have a family." And Kai whispered back, "I intend to keep them." Later that night, as the palace quieted and the city finally slept, Kai stood once again in the chamber of the Lumians. Alone this time. The pool pulsed softly before him, calm now. He didn't reach in. He didn't need to. He'd already seen what could be. Now he knew what would be. No matter how dark the future became, whether it came wearing his face or wielding his blade, he would stand. Not just as the Shadow Consort, not just as a warrior, but as something more. A protector, a partner, a man with something to live for and everything to lose. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself peace. Even as the storm gathered just beyond the stars,